Good morning. This is The Weekender on CJLS. I'm Gary Nickerson.
And I'm Ray Zink. The Weekender for Sunday, February 15th, 2009.
This morning, a story of sexual abuse, a full-hour edition. The case against the late Father Adolphe LeBlanc, who served in several parishes of the Roman Catholic Church in western Nova Scotia decades ago.
We speak with Del Boudreau, who says he was abused as an altar boy by the Catholic priest. He is one of several men who have filed a multi-million-dollar litigation against the Catholic Church.
And we also talk to the lawyer representing alleged sexual abuse victims.
A warning, the contents of this program this morning are disturbing, and listener discretion is advised.
The Weekender returns in a moment on CJLS. Welcome back to The Weekender on CJLS. I'm Gary Nickerson. Pope Benedict called it the scourge of the sexual abuse of children. But these words are cold comfort to a growing list of Yarmouth County men who have recently come forward to accuse a Roman Catholic priest of abusing them as children 5 decades ago. At the center of a civil lawsuit is the late Father Adolphe LeBlanc, who served in several parishes including Wedgeport and Salmon River. While Father LeBlanc died 35 years ago, his alleged legacy is one more chapter in a dark history of the Catholic Church, which is accused of knowing about the abuse at the time. A law firm in Ontario is representing Boudreau and several other alleged victims, and will speak to one of its lawyers later in the program. Officials of the Roman Catholic Church contacted by CJLS have declined to be interviewed. A warning, some of the contents of this program are disturbing, and listener discretion is advised. The Weekender now speaks with Del Boudreau. What is your first memory, Del, of Father Adolphe LeBlanc, the first time you met him? Do you remember that?
It's so strange, Gary, that for whatever reason I can't even come close to remember when I first met him. I don't know if it's something that's blanketed out or all I remember is the first time I was abused, basically.
But no significant memory of him prior to that first
No,
time of
nothing
abuse.
that would make me. I don't even remember how we were, or I was asked to be an altar boy, but I knew it was an honor to be an altar boy at that time.
Do you remember having a discussion with your parents, with family members, about being an altar boy?
No, nothing at all. Everything seemed it's so strange. I can remember so many things even before and after, but certain things. But this, there's no memory.
You don't remember him doing Mass in church or anything like that?
No, at that time, I think he came in 1953, so I would have been nine years old when he first came to Wedgeport. But at that time, you just went to church, and I don't think I was an altar boy at that time, so it wouldn't have made much difference.
What is your first recollection of abuse by Father LeBlanc?
My first recollection, either I was around, 11 and a half, was that in the shed, or garage is still there, or barn, was him, more or less, forcibly in saying, this was because of the fact they were men of God, that was acceptable by God, and all of that. And I don't have to describe fully, and I don't even know if you're allowed to say whatever happened in radio, but it was a horrific experience that he done to me, that it's something you can't even, begin to imagine unless you've experienced sexual abuse by anybody, but especially a priest. And the reason I say that is that at that time, in our generation, I'm talking 55 years ago, the Catholic Church was a very powerful organization. The parish priest was a very powerful man above anything. And you had to go to confession once a month. You had to receive communion once a month. You had to... I remember as a young preteen, you would never swear, and even dare swear in front of a girl. And furthermore, you would never, never, never use the F word in front of a girl. That would have been terrible. I mean, you were just not brought up that way. So then you had, that's the way we were brought up, and then you had this, thing happening by a priest, which I can't hardly describe, and a lot of men my age right up to this day cannot come out and say it or tell anybody. It was a horrific thing that you never forget, no matter how old you get to be. And that, to me, maybe that's why, I can't recall. I can't even remember the names of other altar boys that were at that time with me. I can give you names maybe after, but at the same time there, it's just like a blank. And you live like that for, 50-something years.
Let's go back to that shed.
Yes.
That first time. Where was the shed?
It's right next to the church.
It's still there, you said?
It's still there, yeah.
You see it every day?
No, because I don't live in Westport. But I moved out of Westport almost 15 years ago. And but if I go to Westport, yeah, you see it.
When you do see it, what?
Oh, it comes back. There's so many things. And that brings it back, even though you try to bury it in your mind, there's so many things that bring it back. It's like a button. The church itself will bring back these terrible memories of what happened that you're trying to forget so hard. And you get angry sometimes. I get angry. If you go back, I look back, I'm 65 years old, so I'm getting there. And people, if one question they have is, why do they take so long to say it, to tell somebody? Well, let me tell these people that even today, there's some people in Westport, men that are tougher, stronger, braver than me, that still don't dare and say what happened to them by this so-called priest.
So there are more than the 7 or 8 that are in this lawsuit.
Definitely.
Any idea how many, Del?
Well, you hear so many, and even I was guilty of that. People will say, well, he kind of touched me, or he just touched me. And it's like I say, well, how many men go around, just touching little boys at their private parts, and you're just saying he just touched me? Is that normal? And if you want to go further, is that normal for a priest to do that?
Why do you think they said that? Just touched me.
Because they don't want to, they're downplaying it. And I was guilty of that too, many times during my years of getting older. But, and I don't blame him. I mean, hey, and Gary, I had, since this thing, I came out in the open, I've had phone calls, unreal phone calls by women, females and male, especially females, telling me something happened to them, and I was the first one they told. Which is good. This is why one of the main reasons I'm coming out is I know how it feels when you do finally say it. It's like taking a, huge load off your shoulders, because it's so hard to even come close to describe how you feel, and especially the people that will say, well, how come you waited so long? Well, that's how come. Even now we can't talk about it. Some people can't talk about it, and might never, But the other thing, when my brother came out with it, then I said, the hell with it. I'm going to show that it's not just. And people, said it was just for money and all of that. I don't really care, but, maybe I come to the point that I don't care what people say because of my age. As far as my family is all right with it, and, they heard about, I told them, and that's all I'm concerned. But if I can help somebody, if this helps somebody, That's very good. That's all. That's my reward.
How did Father LeBlanc get you into that shed?
If I recall, it was something to do with working. You know, you had to rake the lawns, and tools were there, and all of that.
So you're in the shed with him.
Yeah.
What happened? Walk us through that, if you can.
You can, but it's so shocking that I don't think actually people will want to hear about it. But it's like almost forcefully, you know, pulling down your pants and doing to me what is unspeakable.
It was oral sex.
It was performed by him.
So you're in there with him. Did he say anything? Was there any chat leading up to this terrible thing?
That's where I was saying that it was, you know, well, because they were men of God and all that, they had different rights or different privileges, and it was not wrong.
What's going through your mind at 11 and a half years old as he's saying this to you?
You're terrified. You don't know what to believe, where to go, where to turn. You know, what do you do? You can't go and tell your parents, that's for sure. I mean, it's almost impossible. They wouldn't have believed you anyhow.
You don't think?
I don't think. Not at that time. See, Gary, it's so much different nowadays. Everything's so much more in the open, you know. You see it advertised on radio, TV. If somebody touches you, to report it to your doctor or your teacher or whatever it is, you know, people you trust. At that time, no. I mean, if you go back, you know, the late 50s, no TV. I didn't know what a pervert was or pedophile. What is meant by those words, either in French or in English? Nobody had an idea. I mean, sure, maybe a lot of grown-ups didn't know what that meant. But I've always said, you know, and I've always wondered my question myself, are these men, because the ratio is out of proportion. You know, sure, we hear about different profession, you know, being charged, or whatever it's a teacher, Boy Scout leader, hockey coach, whatever it is, once in a great while. But this profession of the Catholic priest, it's so numerous, the charges, the accusation, you know, convictions, and that it doesn't make much sense. So my question is, were they pedophiles before they went in? If not, did they become pedophiles after they were ordained priests?
Because some people have said, well, if they would have just let priests marry, none of this would have happened.
That's right.
What's your response to that?
That's not true. I say that, matter of fact, it's based that pedophiles are more or less more heterosexual, you know what I'm saying, than they are homosexuals. There's more pedophiles in that thing. So, to me, you know, it wouldn't make a difference. I think it was going on for, you know, maybe 100 years. I think, you know, and it just grew. But I can't imagine that a young man, having all the best intentions in the world to go into priesthood, was already a pedophile in joining that organization because it gave him the opportunity. Maybe.
Do you think?
I don't know. I really don't know. That's a question I've asked many, many times after I've learned what the word meant.
How old was Father LeBlanc that first time he abused you?
I don't know, but I think it was around late 40s or early 50s, based on the material I read.
Yes. As he is doing this unspeakable thing to you, Del, and you said you were terrified. Some abuse victims say they just go to another place, that they shut their brain down. What happened to you?
The same thing. It's there's just no way. I've always said it's like somebody saying losing a son, and somebody says, "I know how you feel." You don't know how they feel if you haven't lost a son or you lost. You know what I'm saying? And people can say, "Well, Del, I'm sorry for you. I know how you feel." No, unless it's happened to you, you don't know how I feel, and you don't know why. It was not brought up sooner. You don't know why I didn't mention it to somebody else. You don't know why unless it's happened to you. And I think you try to forget it. I mean, in any means way possible. 16 years old, I get drunk for the first time.
Did you know why you got drunk?
No, it was just a couple of teenagers, and somebody got us a pint of rum in Wedgeport, and we drank it and got sick like a dog.
It happens.
It happens. And then, first thing you know, hey, the pain was gone. The memory was gone. Hey, I was happy. And I always wondered about that because my two friends, which are still alive, never had a problem with alcohol. Never wanted to see the thing again for the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months. But in the next 2 or 3 days, I wanted to do it again. Because of the fact that whatever memories I had with this thing was, you heard the saying, you feel no pain? Well, that was so true in this case. It became my best friend, alcohol. But then it became my worst enemy. And it took a long time to get rid of my enemy till finally, I went to the Army Detox here, and I was 37 years old, and I was finally able, for the first time in my life, at 37 years old, tell a counselor or another member there that I had been abused by a priest. From 11 and a half years old to 37. Live with that. And I got rid of my friend, and I never touched it again.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation with the counselor?
No, I was trying to think about it, who he was or who she was. I think it was a woman. And I've always said, even the last experience, seems like it's easier to mention this to a woman than it is to a man.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's because you think, that you're not man because you're not a man anymore because this thing happened, And maybe a woman will relate more, but it's not true. You know what I'm saying? Men, hey, it's just, but to say it the first time to a man, it becomes very hard, and that's why, And you're afraid that they're not gonna. Some people will never understand, and I don't hold that against them. That's their opinion, or that's their thing. But finally, I told my wife, and that was a major, step. And then I mentioned it to my sons as they got older. And before I went public, I met with my grandkids. I got 8 of them. But I met with the oldest ones.
Yes.
Young man and a young woman, and with their parents. And I told them, I said, and I want, there's a lot. I got a couple of 10-year-old granddaughter and a grandson growing up, and sometimes I would look at them and say, that was me. Can you imagine? And I'd say that. So even their parents explained to them, and if anything, it makes them more aware. Because one grandson said, a younger one, he said, well, is Grand-Père, okay now? And they said, yeah, Grand-Père is okay now. So he was very concerned, because because I knew the picture would come out in the Vanguard, and they would wonder why is Grand-Père on there. But if anything else, that would, make him more aware that these things happen, evil things, very evil things can happen, and you have to be aware. And if it does happen, I'm pretty sure now, and it still happens, I'm sure, but a lot of young people that age would at least tell their parents if it happened again. Not just the priests, whatever it is.
Del, that first time in the shed with Father LeBlanc, when he was abusing you, did you try to stop him?
You try to push him away, but it's, he's talking, what I'm saying? You can't. It's the fear of, hey, am I going to hell? It's like, I'm going to hell if I don't. I'm going to hell if I do. After you get older, it shouldn't have happened, especially at that age. If I'm a consenting adult, so be it. I got no problem with that. But if I'm a young man, a young boy, it's a big problem,
Was he physically holding you? Do you
No,
remember?
you can't. Like I said, it's 55 years ago. It's so dramatic, and try to remember all the detail there. It's like you're not tied up or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? It's something. It's like, and I've talked to a woman, incest. How can a 9, 10-year-old? Well, it's her dad. Did she try to scream, run away, or how? It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing.
You're stricken with fear.
That's right. Why wouldn't a young girl, scream? Because most of the time, this incest thing will happen at home. So you ask a young woman or a young girl or a woman now, how was it? How did it happen that your dad committed incest with you? It's the same thing, Gary. You can't explain it until it happens to you.
When he was done, what happened? I mean, he was done doing what he did to you. What happened next?
You just go back home, whatever it is. There's nothing.
Say anything to you?
No, except that I'm telling you, it had to do with God, and the exact words there you can't remember.
Do you remember the walk home?
No, not really. It's like I said, there's so things that possibly you blank out, but the main thing that happened, that will never be blanked out. You can't blank it out. I don't care how hard you try. And maybe the only way you can cope with it is to talk about it. That's the only way. Or tell somebody.
When was the next time?
It could have been a month, could have been 2 months. There were so many.
Did it ever happen in the church?
Yep. Happened in the church and happened in a cottage that happened. There was a cottage somewhere up the line there. And there was I don't know if there was any sleeping bags, but if there was, we couldn't afford one, so you just sleep on the floor. But I remember an older, and I don't know if this was before I was abused or after, but an older, altar boy, like I was telling you, the older ones with and he would not sleep on the floor. He would sleep with the priest. And I always, even at that age, even at that time, maybe because, you found that strange.
Was there talk amongst your friends, your other altar boys, that this was happening to them? Was there any talk at all?
Not with me, but not at that time especially. But you kind of hurt. I can't say that they would talk about it between themselves. It's only the years and years after that they would hear rumors or they would hear stories. But I've never heard anybody, because I can't even picture them. That's the strange part. Who was with me at that time? I know a lot of them after that I was done being an altar boy, and I gave up when I was 14. And it was because I was going to high school, so, that was a thing. And just to show it, which reminds me, at 16, 17, we had we were still having Catholic religion in our schools and all that. We had what they call missionaries, and this young man or young priest, whatever you want to call him, said, there's some things, sometimes you have a problem, you can share it. You can come and meet me at the diocese residence down there. And I got driven down there because I wanted to meet him, and I wanted to tell him. And I told him. Well, he said, oh, no, you got to forgive. You got to ask God to pray for Father LeBlanc, and hopefully, those are not sins, and you just got, I never forgot that again.
So he didn't say, we've got to report this?
No.
This is a terrible thing that happened to you?
No.
Part 2 of our interview with Del Boudreau will resume in a moment on The Weekender on CJLS. Welcome back to The Weekender on CJLS. We now continue our conversation with Del Boudreau, who is one of several men who is accusing Father Adolphe LeBlanc of sexual abuse when they were children. Tell me about the first time you told your wife. You mentioned you told your wife.
Even that, so long, it's about, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And again, I didn't go into details. I said, oh yeah, I was abused by him. And that was it.
So it came up in conversation?
Oh yeah, maybe it had been a news report on TV or from the States or anywhere. But that was it. That's how hard it is. And now we've been married 45 years.
What was her reaction?
I don't know if she had heard, it wasn't, maybe I said, and this is all in French, of course. I said, "Do you still love me?" And she said, "Yeah." Well, that was it.
Then you told your children, or your oldest.
My oldest son, again, just you say it, and it's so strange. Like you're trying, and that's me, Del Boudreau, saying, "Oh, you're downplaying it." Eh? Well, yeah, I've been abused by the priests in Wedgeport too.
How old were your sons?
Oh, they were quite old. Right now, I'd say they'd be. It's in the last 7-8 years, I'd say. One's 38 and one's 40.
Were they shocked?
No.
Really?
No, because were they shocked because it happened to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, but they were not shocked that something like that could have happened. They knew that, because all the reports and all that. So, I suppose I didn't ask them if they were shocked, but I imagine when they look back at the history of Wedgeport, they knew, they must have heard, and they did. And so did a lot of grown-ups here at that time. But still, who was the first parent that was going to go there and make a complaint that a priest, a Catholic priest, was assaulting, abusing sexually little boys? They wouldn't have dared. It's like my wife saying, when they used to, this is our generation, they'd ride a bicycle and they'd wear slacks. What I mean by slack, trousers.
Trousers.
Not shorts. And they'd see that car belonging to priests coming down the road, and they'd go off the road and hide, because it was not proper to show any, maybe a leg or whatever it is, and this was not a skirt or a short. So this is, I'm talking about these things to emphasize. People in my age know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
The people maybe like you maybe have an idea because of your job and all that. But at that time, that's how strict it was, which makes the impact 1,000 times more, And that's why you didn't dare fight or run away or tell it to somebody. It was a little god. It was a god in the parish. That's what it was.
Do you think you and your family would have been ostracized from the community had you stepped forward at some point?
Oh yeah, you wouldn't. They would have said there's something wrong with that kid. Send him away. Send him away. Take At that time, we used to call it what the hospital in Halifax, Dartmouth. Send him to Dartmouth. That's all they had to say because he's got a problem. No, that's why. It was no, and like I say, Gary, even to this day, right now, as I'm speaking to you, I know men in Wedgeport that have been abused the same way I have, and there's just no way they would want to come and say it to some of them. I told them, at least tell your children, which are the same age my kids. At least, come on, you got to tell them, because before somebody else, tells them, or somebody saw something or heard something, and you'd be better it comes from you than it comes from a stranger.
How old were your oldest grandchildren when you told them?
Just about 4 weeks ago. One's 17, the other one is going on 16. One's going on 18, one's going on 16. 16 is a girl and 18 is a young man.
What was that conversation like, Del?
I told him exactly what happened. Right in detail.
Like the graphic detail.
Yes. And I would say my grandson was angry. But after I explained, I said, look, it's nothing that these things happen in the world. Evil things happen. You have to be alert all the time. And he understood. He calmed down. He's got a temper like me, I think. But no, he's all right now, and so does the girl. You know what I'm saying? They know what happens. Like I said, it's more open now.
Yep.
I'm sure that your dad would never have gone and told his grandsons, something like this. It wasn't done.
Certainly not.
It's something that which makes it a little bit easier to say.
It's interesting, Del, that you told all the graphic details to your grandchildren who were older teenagers and not to the adult members of your family. Why do you think that was?
At that time,
Yeah.
you still,
different.
yeah, you felt guilty. You felt guilty. And maybe that's another reason. You feel guilty. Well, like, and you asked me the question, well, why didn't you push? Well, you didn't say, why didn't you? You said, did you try to push him off? Well, why didn't I push him off? I'm an 11-year-old boy. Could I? Did I dare? No. Did another 35, 40 kids in Westport there? No. And that's why I'm here, Gary.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Do you still go to church?
No, except for a wedding or a funeral or things like that.
Because of what happened to you?
Yeah. Well, there's nothing there. I mean, I find it's a terrible thing that they knew about it. The organization of the church knew about it. And instead of trying to correct it or they just transfer a priest from one parish to the other. And to me, it was brush underneath the bat, you know. It's not supposed to happen. It's not happening. Let's not talk about it. Let's not do anything about it, and we'll carry on.
Beyond not going to church regularly, how has this affected your faith personally with God?
Yeah. Well, I guess you could say I still believe in God. Yeah, you would say I still believe in God, yeah, and I haven't turned against Him, basically, because there's a lot of evil things that happen in the world that are just as bad, and God was supposed to be there, but it happened. You know what I'm saying?
Do you miss, beyond what terrible things happened to you, do you miss that, being able to go to church and taking communion, confession, and all of that?
You try. We tried, me and the wife, even the kids, we'd go to church. You know, I don't know if it was just playing the role, or do I really? But and then after a while, gradually, and I can't really pinpoint it on this. Maybe it's a combination of all of this and the church itself not changing to the times.
You mentioned that when you first went public, you got a lot of calls from men and women who said they had been abused. Did you get other calls from people who said, "How dare you"?
No. It is unreal. It is unreal. Every phone call that I got was very, very supportive. Very supportive. I got calls from Halifax, the States, from all across, Nova Scotia, and more importantly, those calls from away were people originally from Westport and Yarmouth County. But I got calls, from every village in Yarmouth County. Very prominent people in our society, and I got calls from ex-priests, and very, very, very supportive.
There was one comment I want to get your reaction to, if I may, Del, something to the effect that the parishes are struggling and parishes are closing and the church doesn't need this bad publicity. How do you respond to that?
It's not but I find the only change in my lifetime that the Catholic Church ever made was to change from the Mass being said in English or French compared to Latin, and to turn the priest facing the people instead of, having his back to it. That, to me, is the only two changes. To me, they were like guilty, just like the car factories. They knew there was a problem, but maybe it'll go away, we'll clear it, and they never took the action to correct it. Till now, it's getting to be a serious, major financial problem. Well, hey, it's, I don't feel bad at all. It's something's got to be corrected. Maybe, people will come back if it's...
What does the church have to do? What does the Pope have to do to make it right for abuse victims like you?
I don't think except trying to correct the number of abuse or priests that are abusing people or kids. Except trying to correct that, there's not too much else.
How do you think they can do that? Should there be some sort of a process when a person applies to be a priest, some sort of a psychiatric test or something?
Well, we have all kinds of tests for different employment. I mean, some guys, you're going to join a very sensitive post with the government or the police department, or you're going to have to take all those tests. So even as you know, Gary, there was some, I was not too long ago, news that the questionnaire or the interview was asked, I don't know what career it was, did you have sex with animals? That question was asked.
Right.
So that shows you how. So if they can do that for those careers, why wouldn't they do that to, before a young man goes into the priesthood?
After you went public, did you ever get a call from anybody in the church, affiliated with the church?
No, they wouldn't. Ex-priests.
Yeah, or even somebody, even Mancini in Halifax with the Archdiocese.
No. I don't think they would be allowed to.
I suppose because of the
legal matters and
legal
all that,
matters.
Yeah.
As far as the lawsuit is concerned, did they approach you? Did you approach them? How did that happen?
For the lawsuit?
For the law firm, yes.
No, I told them I wanted to make a complaint, official complaint, legal complaint.
All right.
Just like that.
And this particular law firm, I know, has handled many of these
cases.
Yes. Did you look them up on the internet?
No. Well, see, when my brother came home a couple of years ago, he mentioned that, and I knew we had talked even about that. And see again, I said, he's dead. What are we going to do? He said, Deli, if we can help somebody, you do it. So when he came out like that, that's when I said, okay. Me too. I'll show. I want to show the people that this is not just an isolated event. It's a major problem. It's a major problem, and I don't know if it still exists because there's not too many young men going to the priesthood. And the ones we have are getting older. So,
how much are you seeking in this lawsuit?
Oh,
you can't talk
that's
about
irrelevant.
That.
No, I don't. I'm not seeking anything.
When did you and Ken first talk about it?
Maybe a couple of years ago, when he was down here for a visit or something.
He lives away.
Oh yeah, but and I didn't. Yeah, he's been in Ontario 30-something years. Something happened, and again, I can only talk about the abuse with a priest because I know so many. Either you turn to alcohol, drugs, marriage breakdown, or combination of all three. And out of 7 men, 5 of them have gone through that. So there's got to be a connection there. And these are experts telling me that, it's not me. If you look, you can find a lot of material, you can talk to a lot of people.
This will always be with you, won't it?
Oh, yeah. There's just no way. I feel, in plain words, a heck of a lot better than I ever did about this problem. Gary, it's so bad that even, sometimes your radio station will play oldies, songs, you get a program, and a certain song could be from the late 50s or the mid-50s, and that song brings me back, to that age, but it also brings me back to that abuse. And I'm free, but it's still there. It'll be there till I die. So, and that's why I'm saying, people say, well, you just want to do that for money or that. No. Money will never buy that real freedom if it had never had it. Like if it had never happened.
Some people would ask, how could God allow these terrible things to happen to children?
Well, this is what I was saying. Take all the problems we have in the world. You could also say that. How can God allow 26,000 kids to die every day? Or genocide. We still have genocide, even though not just the Jews in Germany, the Nazis. We have genocide in Rwanda. We have genocide in presently now. It's being done. So you can question God on every subject.
Was Father LeBlanc from Wedgeport?
No.
Was he from the area?
Yeah, he's from Salmon River or Clare area.
Have you talked to any of his family that are still living?
No. I know some of his family, young woman, but I haven't talked to them about it. No.
Del, thank you for coming in. Thank you for talking with us.
Before I go, if
Yes.
I can just say this, Gary.
Yes.
If there's anybody there listening to my voice, and this has happened to you, for God's sakes, tell somebody. Please tell somebody, and never, never forget, it was not your fault. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Del.
In a moment, we'll talk to the lawyer who is representing Del Boudreau and several other men in their case against the Catholic Church. The Weekender returns in a moment on CJLS. Good morning. Welcome back to The Weekender on CJLS. I'm Ray Zink. The legal case against the Diocese and Archdiocese of the Roman Catholic Church over allegations of sexual abuse of altar boys decades ago in western Nova Scotia is now in the hands of a London, Ontario law firm. Aaron Lelis of Ledroit Beckett Litigation is the lawyer representing a growing list of men who accuse the late Father Adolphe LeBlanc of sexual abuse. The Weekender has reached Aaron Lelis on the phone from his London office. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to ask you how large your client list is now on this action that you're taking against the late Father LeBlanc.
There are 9 who wish to proceed in the litigation. Now, I've heard from other victims and family members of victims who want to assist, who have information, who want to help the others, but don't necessarily themselves want to be involved.
For every case that you take on, do you believe there are more cases potentially out there? Is there any kind of a benchmark in terms of the ratio of how many you would represent and how that would speak to the actual number of victims out there?
Well, what we can tell is that generally those who come forward are just the tip of the iceberg. There's a number of reasons why people don't come forward, and the psychological experts out there have a lot of reasons and a lot of different theories. There's guilt, there's shame, there's a fear of offending family members, and then there's the loyalty to the church as well, which still holds true for a number of victims. So in other cases, and it's tough to estimate because you never really know how many more are out there, but we see cases like the Father Sylvester case in the Diocese of London, where it initially started out as just a handful of victims, and then as the years went on, more and more came forward. And there were actually 47 who came to the police and were criminal complainants, and Father Sylvester pled guilty to abusing 47, and then the end number ended up being 70 who came forward. In this case, since Father LeBlanc, he was ordained in 1924, and he served a long career up until his retirement in '69. Now, most of the people who we've heard from were abused in the 50s and early 60s. So I imagine a lot of his victims many are deceased, and a lot are probably just at the age where they wouldn't want to go through the litigation process.
Are all your clients men, and what average age would have they been when the alleged abuse took place?
They are all men, and the majority of them started being abused at either age 10 or 11, and that would be the age they became altar boys. Most of it occurred in the altar boy context, and for most of them, the length of the relationship of abuse was mostly between 2 years and 4 years.
You did mention some of the reasons why many alleged victims would not come forward. Is there any theory or any commonality among the reasons for those of your clients now or others that you perhaps have represented in other cases, why they come forward and when they come forward? Let's say it seems to be later in life when they're more elderly. What is the motivation to finally come forward?
Well, with the Father Adolphe LeBlanc victims, the commonality with the reason why they didn't come forward at the time is because they simply believed that no one would believe them over the parish priest, and they probably had good reason for that. I know that some of them, Del Boudreau, he spoke to a visiting priest about being abused by Father LeBlanc, and he tells me that the visiting priest simply told him to pray about it, and he's not aware of anything else that happened. Typically, we see victims will tell their parents, and their parents, in some cases, try to either minimize it or just tell them, don't say bad things about a priest, things of that nature. So the main reason why people don't talk about it at a young age, there's a guilt that they've done something wrong, and there's the fear of getting in trouble for speaking out against the respected parish priest. And then the reason why people come forward later on in life, in some cases I've heard people aren't comfortable coming forward while their parents are still alive. Sometimes with family members still around, the fear of disrupting the family unit, of being disowned by parents or looked down upon by parents is sometimes an issue. And then a lot of the times it's been bothering people over their whole lives, and we hear that they wanted to do something about it at some point, but they couldn't do it alone. So then when they find out that someone has come forward, someone like Ken Boudreau, who was the first one to come to us, then in that case they can take comfort in knowing that if there are more, then likely they're more likely to be believed, and then they don't have to go through the process alone.
Mr. Lelis, what's your reading of the family and community reaction? What are the victims, your clients, now telling you as they come forward? What is the reaction that they're facing within their own families, extended families, and within their larger community? Is there a common reaction that they're all receiving, either negative or positive?
Well, I don't think it's common. I think it's different in the different situations. The majority, overwhelmingly, is positive. There's especially in the later people who have come forward. The initial ones, and I'm talking about Ken Boudreau and Raymond Boudreau, who were the first two who did the press conference in Halifax, and they were really the first ones to come forward. To us, anyways. There's always doubters. There's always people who wonder why it took so long, who think that if it happened back in the 50s and 60s, they should have done something about it then. But the majority of people, and especially now, Del Boudreau is quite a respected man in the Wedgeport area, and I think with him coming forward as well, and as time goes on, and as people think more about the issue and learn more about the issue of sexual abuse by a priest or someone in a position of authority, people start to realize that it's very difficult for the person as a child to do anything about it, and then living with the shame and fear of not being believed. It really affects people, and it causes them to not be able to speak about it at an earlier age. And the court system has recognized that. The Supreme Court of Canada has recognized psychological experts who have spoken about this issue, and the issue of people being unable to speak about being abused as a child is it's well known now, and I think people support it now.
Father LeBlanc, as we all know, is deceased. So who is the subject of the litigation? Who is being sued? What legal action is being taken against what party in this case?
It's against the diocese. The diocese is the corporate entity of the church. The church is broken down into dioceses. There's a Halifax diocese and the diocese of Yarmouth, and then there's also the diocese of Antigonish in northern Nova Scotia. But those are the three dioceses in Nova Scotia, and in this case, the action is against the Halifax Archdiocese and the Yarmouth Diocese. Now, the Halifax Archdiocese ordained and trained Father LeBlanc, and he served in that diocese for over 25 years. And then the Diocese of Yarmouth was formed in 1953, and at that point in time, Father LeBlanc became an employee of the Diocese of Yarmouth. Now, some of the abuse occurred before 53, some after, and so we've named both dioceses. And as the employer, they're responsible for the actions of their employee, and the Supreme Court of Canada has also found diocese liable for the actions of a priest. So at this point, the only legal remedy and only way to seek answers and to seek justice is through the civil court system.
I want to ask about what you are seeking. It does involve money. I haven't heard that you're going after an apology or a recognition or reconciliation that in fact this has happened. Perhaps that is part of the action. Some people may be distracted by the amounts of money involved here because we're talking about millions of dollars. What is the significance and what is the rationale and the justification for the amounts of money that you're seeking?
Okay, well, we are seeking an apology, and we're seeking access to court records to determine who knew about Father LeBlanc. Did the diocese know about it? What was the extent of the problem? So that's part of it. Now, that's not in the statement of claim, but that can be part of mediations, of settling the cases. Apologies can be part of the terms of the mediations, and in some cases, through the litigation process, the diocese can be pressured to make an apology on their own, and we hope that happens in this case, and we've seen it happen in other cases. And then as for the dollar figure on the statements of claim, the law breaks down damages in a civil case into a number of different categories, and we have to ask for the most we could possibly expect to get in each category. And when you add them all up, it comes to the $2 million figure. Now, we don't expect to get that much in each case or even in any of the cases. The biggest case of general damages in a sex abuse case was out in British Columbia, where a woman who was abused for 8 years got $325,000. Now, that's general damages. Anything after general damages has to be proved dollar for dollar. So there's economic damages. If, for example, if someone was going through, was going to be an engineer, all their brothers were engineers, and then they dropped out of school because of some kind of a psychological impact of the abuse, then you can measure an economic impact of the loss. Some cases have that, some cases don't, and that generally tends to be the higher number. So the $2 million, it's not very indicative of what the cases will settle for or what they will get in the end.
How would you respond? Because an argument has been made that if there is a monetary implication against the churches or local dioceses, which are now very hard-strapped in terms of their economic ability, that it would further hurt the churches, that all this will do is to ruin perhaps some local Catholic churches. How do you respond to that?
Well, a lot of these cases that we've seen have been covered by insurance policies. I know in Ontario, at least, and this is something that we're not privy to, but the exact detail. But a lot of the claims are covered by a general liability policy. So that's one reason that where not all the money comes directly out of the parishes. And then they're organized by the diocese level, so anything not covered by insurance would likely come from the diocese. And in that case, I don't know what the financial resources are, but they're generally higher than the victims of the abuse, and whatever amount comes from them serves as a financial incentive to change their policies and to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen in the future. And in that case, I'd consider that a positive step.
I want to ask about the pivotal nature of your case. Is the onus on you to prove there was knowledge and perhaps a cover-up by diocese and archdiocese officials in order to prove your case? Is that, if we boil it down, is that essentially what must be proved here to succeed in your case?
No, it's not essential. That if the diocese knew about it and failed to react properly, then that would be, they could be found negligent for that kind of behavior. Negligence is not necessary in these cases. There's another type of law. It's fiduciary relationship, and if there's a fiduciary relationship and a breach of that relationship, they can be found liable as well. But the most likely way of being liable, and the way that the Supreme Court has recognized, is an employer being vicariously liable for the actions of their employee. So whether the diocese knew about it or not, they could still be liable through vicarious liability. And the rationale is that where you have your employees interacting with children, creating a risk, taking children away on weekends, being trusted with children, that the employer, the organization, should set up policies to prevent abuse of that trust, and should be liable if a breach of that trust happens.
Are we talking years to resolve this before the courts?
Yes, we're talking years. Most of our cases settle somewhere between 1 year and 3 years. And if it goes to trial dates generally take from filing a statement of claim to getting the trial date somewhere between 1.5 years and 3.5 years.
So obviously we are looking at an extended process here that will not end soon.
Yeah, and we've talked to our clients about that, and they're ready for that. And that's just one of the necessary parts of the fact-finding process of the litigation system.
Thanks very much for talking to us.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron Lelis is the lawyer representing men who accuse the late Father Adolphe LeBlanc of sexual abuse.
And that's our program for this Sunday morning. Thanks for joining us. The Weekender, a production of CJLS News, returns next Sunday morning at 9 for another edition of in-depth news from Western Nova Scotia. For Rays Inc., I'm Gary Nickerson. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.